most. You look at our 112 countries and you start running seven that.
Well, so I'll start. I guess I'll use something.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Breakout Session 11 on governance and political economy. We are glad to have you with us for this afternoon session of the 9th Summit Annual Economics Conference 2026. It's my pleasure to introduce our session chair, Mr. Neil Gandhi, Senior Governance Advisor at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and our discussant, Mr. Shadli Rahman, Country Economist at the International Growth Center, Bangladesh. Without further ado, I now hand over the session to Mr. Gandhi.
Thank you very much. If you can all hear me, I hope you can all. This is quite a small room, as you say, but I hope you can all hear. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for coming to this session. Can you hear?
I think you can do
This one. Okay, I'll stand closely. So thank you for coming to this session. This is the session on governance and political economy. So hopefully you're all in the right place. It's good to see a good turnout in the room. It's good to see lots of people joining online as well. This is obviously a crucial set of issues. Governance, political economy, very important set of issues. I'm glad that you have all made the time to come to this session. So as the host has said, my name is Neil Gandhi. I'm the Senior Governance Advisor at the British High Commission here in Dhaka. I've been here for 2 years. Lots of change in terms of governance and political economy over the last 2 years. It's been fascinating to be here. And obviously the British High Commission and Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and DFID, who you may know, has been a long-term partner to Bangladesh. We've worked here for many, many years on governance, state capacity, civil society. So I'm glad that we can continue to work in partnerships with the counterparts here in Bangladesh. We've got a really good panel today, really good discussion today, got some really fascinating presentations. And so I hope that you all find this interesting and stimulating. So I'll introduce you to all the people here and some of the two people who are presenting online. I'll start with Mr. Shadli Rahman. Mr. Rahman is country economist at the International Growth Center in Bangladesh. He leads research, policy analysis, and stakeholder engagement on economic growth and development challenges. His work focuses on evidence-based qualitative research and policy analysis. Prior to his role at the IGC, he was working at BRAC, and then before that working at UNDP as a policy analyst. And he'll be the discussant for this session. On our panel here in person, we have Ms. Zinat Khan Modama. I'm sorry for my Bangla, but it's not very good after 2 years. And so she's a development researcher and analyst with a strong background in qualitative and quantitative methods. She works at the moment as a business analyst at Light Castle Partners, contributing to STEM initiatives, research and program interventions. And she previously worked with BIGD here at Breakout University, and her research includes civic space and democracy assistance. She'll be presenting on democratic governance and democracy assistance and its links to democratic transition. Our second panelist is Mr. Asif Irfan. Asif is a graduate student at Jahangirnagar University, who is completing his master's degree. His interests lie in development economics, political economy, and environmental economics. And his presentation will focus on political stability and government effectiveness and their impact on infrastructure development in South Asia. And we have two people who are joining us online. I hope they'll show their faces when they are called. So the third panelist is Dr. Mohammed Zulkar Naeem. Dr. Naeem is an associate professor in the Department of Economics at Aligarh Muslim University. He has a PhD in economics and has published on financial development, macroeconomic performance, and applied econometrics. And so his presentation will focus on India, and he's looking at export fluctuations and geopolitical shocks with India as a case study. And finally, we have Mr. Jeet Saha. He's a UGC Senior Research Fellow in the Department of Economics at the University of North Bengal. His research covers political economy, population and health economics, and growth and development. And his presentation takes us outside of South Asia, looking at economic sanctions and income inequality with a focus on Russia following the Crimean war crisis. In terms of format, I'll ask each panelist to speak for, or presenter to speak for 8 to 10 minutes. This will be followed by comments from our discussant, and then we'll open the floor to you for questions, and also for those joining online. And then our presenters will have an opportunity to respond. So I hope you enjoyed the session. Let's turn to our first presenter, Ms. Zinat Khan Modema.
Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, everyone.
Do you need a microphone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Am I audible? Yes. Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Zinat Khan Modema, currently working as a researcher at BITT Brack University. My topic for today's presentation is to analyze the impact of democratic aid, specifically provided by the USAID on democratic transition of the recipient countries, titled as Democratic Assistance and its Impact on Democratic Transition, assessing the experience of USAID. The global spread of democracy in the 20th century was one of the most important topics in the discourse of politics. As Huntington pointed out in his book, in between the 1970s and the 1990s, not less than 30 countries transitioned towards democratic regimes, a period that is notably referred to as the third wave of democracy. During this period, the countries that transitioned toward democratic regimes were assisted by several democracy promotion activities, indicating a pivotal role of the democracy promotion activities in case of democratic transitions.
Slideshow already.
Sorry for the interruptions.
I'm back. After the session, we started.
Okay. As a matter of fact, it is a general belief by the prominent donor countries like USA that democracy promotion in targeted country will assist the country towards democratic transition or democratic consolidation. Over the years, democratic assistance has become a separate important entity of the democracy promotion activities. In these figures, billions and billions of US dollars have been spent throughout the years to promote democracy in the targeted countries. In the late 1980s, less than US $1 billion a year went to democracy assistance, but in 2015, the total was more than a 10 billion US dollar. But does this aid really lead to democratic development? This is what I asked in my research. The objective of my paper is to analyze the impact of democratic aid on democratization of the recipient countries. Throughout the literature, this relationship remains contested. Additionally, although the democratic aid has remained steady over the years, from 2006 onwards, the world has faced a global democratic pushback. This phenomenon therefore raises the question on the relationship between democracy aid and democratization. This paper employs a cross-country analysis of 112 countries over the period of 2001 to 2018, a period that can be termed as before the fund cut. Using panel dataset and fixed effect regression model, the reason for choosing this timeline is that the previous studies mostly took a timeline from the 1990s till 2000s for the analyzing the impact, and secondly because of the global phenomenon of the democratic pushback from 2006 onwards. The analysis analysis examines the effect of democracy aid from one of the major donor states, USA, through its disbursement through USAID. The reason for choosing USA and specifically USAID is that USA has traditionally been one of the prominent donor of democracy aid, and as a primary agency for administering foreign assistance, USAID plays a crucial role in democracy promotion activities of the USA. USAID emphasizes its democracy promotion activities in four subcategories, being the rule of law, civil society, good governance, and electoral procedure. And for this paper, I have taken into account Dawes' definition of democracy, where he extends the classical and simple definition given by Schumpeter and placed 8 procedural conditions necessary for modern political democracy. Since the paper focuses on the US democracy activities, the liberal notion of the democracy is taken into account. Therefore, including Dawes' definition of democracy as a concept and the Liberal Democracy Index by Wheaton Institute as the dependent variable. As I have already mentioned, the objective of this paper, my research question, is as simple as finding the relationship between US-sponsored democracy aid through USAID and the democratization of the aid recipient country. Throughout the literature, as I have already mentioned before, there have been studies like Goldsmith, Scott, and Steels that found positive relationship between democracy aid and democratization, whereas some studies found negative relation. Interestingly, there are also papers that found no relation between democracy aid and democratization. In most of this paper, development aid or democracy aid has been the main independent variable. The independent variable, therefore, I have taken in my study is the annual disbursement of the democracy aid through USAID for a country from foreign assistance website of the USA. The dependent variable I have taken for my paper is the Liberal Democracy Index provided by the Wheaton Institute that will show the democratization of a country over time and converted the scale to a 0 to 100 scale. And this is the theoretical framework of this paper, whereas both macro perception and the micro perception of the factors of democratization is taken into consideration. The factors and their link to democratization can be linked broadly into 3 camps of the theories of democratization, being structural, institutional, and agency approach. The other variables taken into account are non-democracy aid, termed as non-DRG aid, and the reason for taking the variable is that aid not directed towards democratization may also have an indirect impact on democratization of a recipient country. The reason for taking GDP growth rate as one of the control variables is that structural theories create a strong foundation for the importance of macro level structural factors in democratization. Similar is the case for trade integration that can contribute to democratization positively or negatively. A regime's durability that shows the stability of a state's regime works as an internal factor and supports the argument of institutional theories in democratization. For ease of analysis, the value of regime duration that I have taken for the quality of governance data has been transformed into a year and created as a 1-year lagged variable. All the independent variables has been transformed as a 1-year lagged variable. For colonial origin, the general expectation is that it may positively or negatively affect the democratization process of a country depending on the institution established during the colonial rule that may either be inclusive or extractive, as argued by Acemoglu and Robinson. In this paper, it is a categorical variable consisting of a few categories like British, Spanish, Dutch, Italian, USA, French, Portuguese, and Belgian. For this paper, the colonial origin is taken as an interaction with the democracy aid to see how colonial origin influences the effect of the democracy aid on democratization. This is therefore the econometric model of this paper. The summary statistics in figure 1 shows the level of democracy over the years. And the level of democracy is, of course, measured by the Liberal Democracy Index in the period between 2001 to 2018. As we can see, after 2005, there was a sudden decline that again followed an upward trend till between 2010 and 2012. But in the year between 2010 and 2012, there was again a sudden decline. Interestingly, at the time of Arab Spring, since then, there has been a downward trend. Figure 2 shows the democracy aid through USAID over the period between 2001 and 2018. And this figure supports the literature showing a steady trend, except some insignificant decline. Figure 3 shows the mean level of democracy in colonial origin, and we can see countries that were under Dutch rule having a higher score of democracy level, and countries under Italian rule having the lowest score of democracy achieved. Figure 4 shows the mean level of democracy over the geopolitical region. As the figure shows, Western Europe and North America has the highest score of liberal democracy than any other region. And surprisingly, even though the largest share of democracy aid by the US and the other donor countries, when it has gone to MENA, specifically Middle East Asia and Northern Africa for the last few decades, it has the lowest score of democracy among all other geopolitical regions. You have 1 minute left. Our analysis shows that the democracy aid has a significant positive relation with the democratization, with a 10% increase in the aid leading to a 0.09 increase in the liberal democracy scale, controlling for other variables. Additionally, non-democracy aid also has a positive impact on the democratization of the recipient country. Trade openness causes a negative impact on the democratization of the recipient country, while GDP growth has a positive impact on the democratization. Moreover, region duration has a negative relationship with democratization. In case of colonial origins, countries that have been under British colonial rule are affected positively by the democracy aid more than the countries that have been never colonized or have been under Spanish or US or Portuguese colonial rule. On the other hand, countries that were under once Dutch, French, Italian, or Belgian rules experienced a greater positive effect of the democracy aid on democratization compared to the countries with British colonial history. This study also points to several directions for further research. Future work could explore whether the relationship between democracy aid and democratization is linear or non-linear. Expanding the analysis to include multiple donors would allow for comparison of different approaches to democracy promotion, and some of the non-significant relationships observed in the analysis are also particularly
We'll just give you
interesting.
1 more minute and then we'll come to a close. Yeah.
Yes, non-significant relationships observed in the analysis are also particularly interesting and suggest that the effects of democracy aid may be more context-dependent than expected. And that is the econometrics regression table of my research, and that is all. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll come to questions and we'll get to the discussion at the end, and then we'll come to questions from the audience. So now we'll take as a fair fun. I don't know if you want to take if you want to switch seats and for your presentation.
Okay. Myself, Asif Irfan. I am a graduate student from the Department of Economics, Jahangirnagar University. Today, I am presenting a paper titled Exploring the Impact of Political Stability and Government Effectiveness on Infrastructure Development, Evidence from South Asian Nations. This paper is authored by myself, and my co-author is Ishtiyaq Raihan, and assistant professor from Department of Economics, Jahangir University. Let's go to the introduction part. Gross fixed capital formation is a proxy for infrastructure development that stimulates economic activity and improves overall productivity. Political stability attracts investors to confidently fund massive long-term physical assets. Competent governance ensures efficient and waste-free execution and monitoring of large-scale projects. Trade liberalization creates competitive pressure to build quality roads and ports to lower transit costs. Economic wealth or GDP supplies the financial opportunity for leaders to allocate national budget towards new assets. Urbanization sparks a continuous cycle of demand for new networks to accommodate cities. Now we'll know about the methodology of the paper. In this slide, we can see that every variables are converted into the natural logarithm form so that the skewness should be reduced and we can express our results in percentage form. Here we can see that the dependent variable is the gross fixed capital formation and the independent variables are political stability and absence of violence or terrorism index and the government effectiveness index, trade as a share of GDP, real GDP per capita, and urban population as a share of total population. This study is a quantitative study using panel data estimation method. We have selected the period starting from 2002 and to 2022. The data source in our paper was Worldwide Governance Indicators, World Bank, and United Nations Population Division. In this slide, the methodology is continued. We will know about the diagnostic test used in this paper. At first, we have used the multicollinearity test. Then there is fixed effect model and random effect models are used. Cosman test is used to choose between the fixed effect model and the random effect model. Then we perform the Pesarans cross-sectional dependency test and modified Wald test for checking heteroscedasticity. Then there is autocorrelation test for checking autocorrelation, and our final results are based on the fixed effects regression with Driscoll-Clay standard errors. Let's see about the multicollinearity test. Multicollinearity occurs when two or more independent variables are highly correlated with each other in a regression analysis. In this table, we can see that the multicollinearity between the variables are the VIF of the variables are between 2.18 to 6.28. So we can see that the multicollinearity is moderate, and this is not a fixed effect model is used when unobserved time invariant effects are correlated with explanatory variables. Random effect model is used when unobserved and time invariant effects are uncorrelated with explanatory variables. The Hofmann test is used to see which one is preferable. Here, the p-value we found from the Hofmann test is 0.00. So we have decided that the fixed effect model is appropriate for our study. Let's see about the cross-sectional dependence test. Cross-sectional dependence occurs when error terms across different cross-sectional units in a panel dataset are correlated at the same point in time. The null hypothesis of the Pesarans CT test is the error terms are cross-sectionally independent. We found that the p-value is 0.08. So the cross-sectional dependence is present in our dataset. Heteroscedasticity occurs when the variance of the error terms in a regression model is not constant across all levels of the independent variables. This violates the OLS assumption of homoscedasticity. We have used the modified Wald test, and the null hypothesis is there is homoscedasticity, but the p-value is 0.00. So we have decided that heteroscedasticity is present in the dataset. Then we have come to the autocorrelation test. Autocorrelation occurs when error terms in a regression model are correlated with their own past values across time periods or observations. This violates the OLS assumption of independent errors. The presence of autocorrelation is tested through the regression of residuals on lagged residuals, which is a manual test. In this case, we can see the coefficient is 0.73 and the p-value is 0.00. That means the p-value is significant. So autocorrelation is present in our study. As we can see, all three problems, that means autocorrelation, cross-sectional dependence, and heteroscedasticity is present in our dataset. So we have decided to use the fixed effect regression with Driscoll-Cray standard errors for our final results. Findings show that a 1% increase in the political stability index is associated with a 0.07% increase in the gross fixed capital formation. Then, surprisingly, the government effectiveness index is insignificant as the p-value is 0.87. Then, a 1% increase in the trade openness is associated with a 0.243% increase in the gross fixed capital formation, and this is significant. After that, we can see the most effective indicator or variable in our study, that is real GDP per capita. A 1% increase in real GDP per capita is associated with a 1.48% increase in the gross fixed capital formation, and this is significant. After that, we have found that the urbanization or urban population as a share of total population is found to be insignificant as the p-value is 0.83. Let's go to the discussion part. Political stability index, real GDP per capita, and trade openness has significant positive impact on infrastructure development. We have found that the government effectiveness index is insignificant. The reason is that during our data analysis, we found that the government effectiveness index is very low, and after that, this indicator is not improved over the time. But we have seen that the infrastructure development is increasing day by day. So the impacts of government effectiveness are offset by economic growth and compensated by political stability. Another insignificant variable was urbanization, and here this indicator shows that urban population increase. We can see that in South Asian country, that means our study area, people come from villages to cities and create slums. So we can say that there is unplanned and informal settlements in the cities, so that untranslated demographic pressure. So these are the reasons behind insignificance of urbanization. Policy recommendations: strengthening democratic institutions and ensuring political stability to create a secure environment that attracts large-scale infrastructure investment. Promoting trade liberalization and improving regional connectivity to stimulate economic activity and boost GDP. A portion of national income growth must be reinvested into further infrastructure development, creating a self-sustaining cycle of economic expansion. Conclusion. This study shows that political stability and trade openness and real GDP per capita are the drivers of long-term capital investment in South Asian countries. Conversely, factors like government effectiveness and urbanization fail to significantly influence infrastructure growth due to regional administrative inefficiencies and informal demographic expansion. This study highlights that fixed capital formation in this region relies fundamentally on broad economic strength and political steadiness rather than formal bureaucratic competence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. So I think now we're going to switch to online. And so our third panelist online is Dr. Mohammed Naeem. Hopefully he can hear us.
Yeah, just give me a minute. I'm sharing my slide.
Perfect. Yeah, we can see the slide.
Yes.
So I hope it is we are able to see the slide.
Yeah, we can see the slides, and we can hear you as well.
Is it the dynamism in response of exports to geopolitical shocks? Because I have multiple screens, so I don't think I have missed it. May I get a confirmation? Is it the PPT it is showing dynamism in
Yeah.
response of exports?
Yeah, it's showing. I
Yes.
hope you can hear
It's
us.
showing,
It
yes.
is showing, and we can hear you as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. So good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for selecting the paper and allowing me to join the online session. I'm the first author, Mohammad Zulkarnain. I'm teaching here in the Legal Muslim University. I will be presenting this our paper on the dynamism in response of exports to geopolitical shocks, a case study of India. If we have the brief introduction, so what we know, the geopolitical risk, which basically covers all the whether this conflicts, war, terrorism, diplomatic tensions. So basically, whether the man-made or the natural, any kind of thing which basically elevates the risk, it has been we try to capture using an index. So the idea is that the literature has consistently find that elevated or increased geopolitical tension or the risk dampens the trade in the different way. First, it disrupts the supply chain and also raises the trade costs. Moreover, it also dampens the foreign demand investment, and ultimately it affects the bilateral trade flows or the trade openness. Then the second thing till now, what we have seen that from the literature, it has the heterogeneous effects across the sector. It doesn't have a uniform effect on across the sector. There are the multiple reasons could be there. The nature of the commodity, the different aspects of the demand, so the perishable or non-perishable nature of the good. So those things, while discussing the results, we'll be putting there. Why we have picked India, especially for the emerging economy like India, over the years it has been deeply integrated to the global value chain, and it has become one of the major, not from the export, but at least from the import side part of the global value chain. This any kind of exposure to global shock because of the integration of the India to the global economy has increased much more compared to the 1 or 2 decades before. And it has changed over the years. To capture that the changing or the dynamic nature of the exposure, we have used the time varying approach because if you take any constant parameter models, it has one of the inherent basic problem that it ignores the structural breaks, it ignores the nonlinearity. So those aspects cannot be captured using the constant parameter model. Therefore, we have used the time varying model here. So within that context, here basically we try to do the how do geopolitical risk shocks affects India's exports across the major sectors and how has this relationship evolved over time. However, the later on we have tried to add some other part in the paper that is basically on which we are working is that we will be making a comparative analysis of the India and China for the same sectors. So for this part, which I'm presenting here, so what we have taken the real exports as the dependent variable, and shock variable, where basically we want our concern is the global geopolitical risk index, which has been Caldera and Lake has constructed in 22, which is basically the same kind of Bloom kind of index, which basically takes the textual appearance of the geopolitical tensions or different combinations of the text in the newspaper, then they count it, then they normalize it to make the index. However, the index has been quite successful to capture the real world phenomena across the world. As a control variable, I have included India's index of the industrial production, that is basically for the domestic demand, then the Brent crude oil prices. Then we have used the Killian's real economy activity for as an indicator for the foreign demand. And we have also included the real effective exchange rate as the control variable. So this is the methodology we have taken. In the methodology, there are the two aspects here I have to mention. One, the parameters are the time vary within the vector autoregression framework. However, I have not used the impulse response to find out the responses. The reason is that within the impulse response, when we calculate, it takes the whole system into the accounting. Then in that chance, there is the chance if there is any misspecification, it gets basically multiplied. So to avoid that, Jordan 2005 has given the local projection. So it's basically the kind of impulse response function, but only thing it is localized. It takes only a specific estimation equation, not the whole system. So that way we can minimize the misspecification of the whole system. It doesn't spill over to the particular equation. So that's the improvement we have taken. The third aspect which I wanted to mention here is the stochastic volatility. Because most of, even within the dynamic variables or the time vary models, we assume that the volatility is constant. Assuming volatility constant means basically it tells us that that uncertainty remains the same across the state. Across the time period. However, it is quite a fact that whenever we have the crisis, the uncertainty increases. And whenever we have the boom period, uncertainty basically decreases. And it's not limited only to the financial market, it affects all the whole other macroeconomic variable also. So assuming the constant volatility is quite a restrictive assumption. So in this particular model, we have also assumed that volatility is the stochastic.
You have 4 minutes left.
Okay, so I think I should be hurrying then. So this is the 8 consistent export sectors we have taken. We have chosen this 8 based on that over the years. It had been consistently on the top. Then the impulse response using the local projection, I have used the first horizon for the short term, medium horizon for the horizon 4, and the long for the horizon 8. So this is the first thing. So for this, what we have got it here for the mineral and fuels and oils, the prices are the mixed effect we have, at least in the short horizon. So in the beginning, it could be that a supply disruption happens, which basically dominates because the mineral fuels and oils is very much remains within the constant supply. However, in the medium run, what we are seeing that demand compression dominates and the negative response amplified in the volatile regimes. However, in the long run, being the necessary, whether it's mineral fuels or oils, now within becoming one of the necessary part of the whole production process. So in somehow the government intervenes or that it could try to manage the negative effect. On the organic chemicals, what we see that it almost negative in the horizon 1, contraction depends horizon 4, and large we have, and the prolonged negative effect we have for the horizon 8. Then for the pharmaceutical products, there is almost flat response we have. The reason could be that, again, it may be part of the necessity good, and so people have alternate sources, somehow they have some kind of cushion for that. So here we have little less impact on that. However, in case of the precious metals, we have the being the classical safe haven asset, what we say, immediate demand boosting this. What that could be seen even right now. For example, the gold or the silver. So these people have been working this way. So we have the positive spike as the geopolitical tension increases. The rate of these things goes up. And the iron and steel has the strong negative shock. It could be that once supply chain disrupted due to the geopolitical risk, the production process gets, especially the manufacturing gets impacted. Therefore, we have the larger impact on this. Then masonry and mechanical appliance, it also have the negative across all periods. Again, could be
just so you know, you've got 1 minute left to come to the conclusion, if that's okay.
So let me show this. The summary. So here we can say this is the quite summary I have given this. So ultimately, what are the main takeaway we can take? Geopolitical shocks have heterogeneous effects across Indian sectors. Essential goods, especially pharma, are largely insulated. Capital goods suffer deep and persistent declines. We have safe haven assets exhibit the positive but the volatile shorter responses. So framework reveals the responses are time varying and state dependent, amplifying during the high uncertainty episodes, for example, 2020 and 2023. What policy implication we can have? Trade diversification could be one of the way which we can geopolitically sectors we can minimize the impact. And there have been the research which has found if there is the FTA or some kind of negotiation we have, the impact dampens there. Supply chain resilience, we get cool buffer. The macroprudential policies account for asymmetric sectoral shocks in trade policy formation, then monitoring JPR. So what are the future work we can do be done on this paper? The basically incorporating the bilateral GPR measures, which may vary country to country. It could be interesting to see that. And also to evaluate the response within the, including the impact of the FTA as the mediating factor. That could be also a one aspect where we can show, okay, does the FTA has any positive or negative impact, whether it increases, intensifies, or whether it lessens the impact. So thank you for that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and perfect. Thank you as well. So we don't have our fourth speaker, so I think we'll go straight ahead with the discussion. So
He's not
joining. No,
right.
He's got another commitment. But Shadley,
do we need a mic, or can I just speak? What you guys think?
Do we need microphones? Online.
Online. All right. Thank you so much. I hope Mr. Zulkarnaini can hear me. Before I go into the papers, I just want to say that it's nice to be here in front of everyone. I've been attending this conference for many, many years as an attendee, and last about 3 years ago in 2023, I was a presenter for one of the sessions, and now as a discussant, I feel like I've come full circle, right? But before I start on sort of summarizing the presentation, I just want to pick up on something you had said about why political economy is important, right? So essentially, if you look at political economy, it's the interplay between formal actors. So you look at things like laws, regulations, government institutions, etc. And then you have informal actors. So things like elite capture, elite networks, etc. And when those two interplay doesn't work together, that is when you run into problems, right? And so from a Bangladeshi perspective, if you see over the last 20, 30 years, we have had amazing economic growth, but it's been more and more centralized kind of power, right? Centralized government power. And so despite the economic growth, what we have seen is elite capture and stuff like that. So even though we have an economic growth, we have seen that institutionally there have been weaknesses, there have been problems. So those things don't necessarily go together if one works and the other doesn't, right? So that is why I think political economy is important. Just picking up on what Neil was saying in his opening remarks. We have three. I'm sad to know that the fourth person, Jeet, couldn't make it. So we have three presentations. I'll start with the presentation of Asif Irfan, who's here with us. So it's exploring the impact of political stability and government effectiveness on infrastructure development. So the way I like to do this is I like to summarize for a couple minutes what the main findings are, and then end with sort of where I think the paper can be improved with my comments, right? So This essentially looks at using a data set from 2002 to 2022, looks at South Asian countries, uses the gross fixed capital formation, uses a bunch of tests, Hausman, fiscal cry, etc. And I think the main point that this presentation makes is that political stability and trade openness is statistically significant for infrastructural development, but government effectiveness is not necessarily, which is an interesting finding. So infrastructure development continues to increase because of economic growth rather than government effectiveness. That's sort of the crux of this paper. And the tests also show, the Hausman tests and the other tests show that things like political stability, real GDP per capita, and trade openness is statistically significant, but political effectiveness is not. Right? Yeah. So I think, so a couple comments. One is on measurement. I think the paper uses gross state capital formation as a proxy for political stability. Infrastructure development, yes. I think one thing to keep in mind is that the gross capital, the GFCF uses, it includes a large share of private investment, right? And so I think one of the things that would potentially improve this paper is that if you take this into account, right, instead of using mostly public factors, if you take the private investment factor into play as well, right? So using more sector specific or public investment measures might result in improved findings, right? So that's on the measurement side. On the identification side, I think the relationship between infrastructure growth and political stability is most likely endogenous. So I think that in terms of this, it raises the possibility that some of the estimated effects that you have seen, for example, per capita GDP, are capturing simultaneity rather than causal impact. So this is something that you can, in a future iteration of your paper, you can look into, right? And good paper, very good paper, right? Interesting findings, especially the point that government effectiveness doesn't necessarily play as big a role as the other factors. This is not something that I would have thought, but interesting findings. The second paper, Zinat Khan, democracy assistance and its impact on democratic transition, right? Assessing the experiences of the USA, sorry. So firstly, congratulations, you have looked at a data of about 112 countries, so I can only imagine the amount of work that would have gone into this paper, right? And you've also looked at a bunch of interesting effects, a bunch of variables. I'm looking at trade integration, colonial origin, etc., right? And I think the main finding of this paper is that there is a positive relationship between US democracy and democratization, which is evident in your sort of main model, right? And compared to DRG8, non-democratic aid has a smaller positive effect on democracy development. That's essentially the main. And it's interesting. I think one of the things that you mentioned is that we have actually seen I think in your paper, if I'm not mistaken, you said that 2006 onwards or 2016 onwards, we have seen a rise back to authoritarianism rather than democratic sort of democracy. And I was thinking of countries like Brazil, where Jair Bolsonaro, right-wing guy, was in power for many years. Viktor Orban in Hungary was in power for 16 years. He recently lost the election, so maybe Hungary will go back to some sort of democracy now. But in terms of my comments, I think one of the things I think the paper would be even better. It's an already good paper, but it would be even better if you kind of explain the difference in the definition between what you say is democratization or democratic aid and foreign aid, right? So if you can kind of just delineate the definition of those two, I think it would be good. Again, I would make a comment on identification and then on measurement. So in terms of identification, I think there is an endogeneity concern, right? So you see democracy is unlikely to be randomly allocated. So if you look at, I think you were talking about MENA, right? Most of the aid goes to MENA. There's a reason for that. right? There's probably political reasons, not just in economic reasons. There are political reasons for that as well. I think if you explain a little bit more as to why certain amounts of aid go to certain regions, I mean, you already have the table for it. But if you explain a little bit more as to why this is the case, I think the future iteration of a paper could be good. And secondly, on measurement and interpretation, I think the Liberal Democracy Index you have used, the DVM, I think it's called, is very good, but it captures a broad bundle of outcomes, right? So given the fact that it targets specific 8 channels, civil society, elections, etc., it would be useful to unpack which particular dimensions of democracy are actually moving. Right? And I think one way to do this is using the economic concept of ceteris paribus, so holding everything else constant and moving each thing, right? So holding other variables constant and just moving one variable at a time. So this will allow you to see what the impacts of each individual variable are, right? Now, if we go to the third presentation, Mr. Zulkarnain, thank you so much for joining online. You talked about geopolitical risks. You talked about how it affects export baskets as well, and how geopolitical risks are impacting India's exports, right? Essentially. A couple of comments. So on the interpretation of the paper, it shows strong heterogeneity in sectoral responses in relation to geopolitical risks, but it still remains largely descriptive in nature, right? The paper. So I think the contribution would be strengthened if you sort of link these differences more explicitly to the underlying mechanisms, right? Such as global value integration. If you do a little bit more, if you go a little bit more in depth into it, and if you delve a little bit deeper into it, right? And in terms of identification, I think the analysis focused on geopolitical risk, which is good, and exchange rates as well. Then I think one thing which would be good to look at is, also considering other potential global factors as well, right? Such as global demand cycles or commodity prices. So if you kind of combine what you have already looked at with these two, I think a future iteration of the paper would be even stronger. And I would like to end with congratulating all the three presenters, three really good presentations. And I myself, as a student of political science, have learned quite a lot more in terms of both governance and political economy. So thank you so much. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So a little bit, I was not able to hear you. So you asked me to include the demand, global demand side.
Yes.
For that, we have included the Killian index. We have included because it measures the real economic activity of the global world, basically OECD countries. So
Right.
that I have used as the proxy for the global demand.
Okay, and so have you been able to combine it with your India data as well? So for this presentation, I saw the paper that you submitted was essentially the version that I had was an extended abstract, right?
Yeah.
So
This is a little bit.
Is this a full paper right now, or is this an extended abstract? Because that was the version I was given.
Yeah, sorry, because yes. So we have basically improved upon than here that. So we added that data, and
Right. Okay.
yeah, we also are adding now the same in similar analysis China, so that the last part you have commented, then we can find out what could be the possible reason to have the different reactions.
Perfect. Okay, yes. So that wasn't there in the version that I was
Yes.
given.
Yeah.
But given the fact that you're already working on it, I think that issue solves itself. And I hope that, especially if you compare it with China in your future iteration, two of the biggest economies in the world, India and China, I think it would definitely strengthen the paper. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for those remarks. So now I want to open the floor and go to the audience. I don't know if we also have an online audience who want to, if they want to raise their hands, but we'll go to the floor to ask if there's any questions. I don't know if we want to use this microphone.
Yes, okay.
Just a moment. Do you have any questions?
we can just
Any questions from the audience? I think we'll take 2 or 3 questions at a time and then
yeah.
go back. This is for all of the
Present,
yeah, that's which presenter you want to.
I'm a student, Nika, a third year economics student at South University. So my question is to Asim Irfan. Your results show that trade of openness has a significant positive effect on infrastructure. Can you explain in terms, simple terms, how more trade leads to more infrastructure investment? I'm reading it again. Can you explain in simple terms how more trade leads to more infrastructure investment?
Should we just take
a couple more, and then we're going to take a couple more and then answer it together. Question 2 is more after. How trade impacts infrastructure.
I am Siam Hussain Jubair, a student of Jawaharlal University, Department of Economics. So I have a question to Zinath Karamutma ma'am. Your study finds that USA democracy has a special positive effect on democratization, but the effect seems quite small. So do you think it is a quite cost-effective way to promote democracy?
Good question. Do we have any other questions from the room? Go ahead.
So, also student of this department, Jawaharlal University. My question is for Asif Irfan. You studied Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Pakistan from 2002 to 2022. My question is that why did you choose this specific time period? And does it include any major political events that influenced your result? Thank you.
Should we come to you? Because you've got one question.
That's a question.
Thank you, Sam. That's a great question, I would like to say. So, if I'm not mistaken, your question was that the effect of democracy aid on democratization is positive, but has a very small effect. So, is it like a positive way to promote this, whether the US democracy aid has a positive effect of democratization? That's something that my research didn't show, but it's a aspect that definitely I would like to explore more. And I would also like to honestly say that this was the paper that I did back in 2023 when I was an undergrad student for my thesis. So for the time crunch, I couldn't explore a lot of other things that were a very important aspects of my paper. As Shadli Rahman said, that if like I could mention explain more between the difference between democracy aid and the foreign aid. So for my paper, since I have used the USAID data, so in the foreign assistance website of USA, so there are specific 2 sectors like the international sectors and the US sectors. So for the US sectors, what they do is that for their reporting across all sectors to be aligned, they use the democracy data on specifically on the democracy, humanitarian, and governance data. And then for the international sector, they follow the OECD data rules, which is like the civil society data. So when I was using the USAID data, I thought of using the USG sector code book for my democracy aid data. That is why I used the democracy, governance, and humanitarian data. And for second, to address Siam's question, I definitely intend to make this a mixed method research, and probably that's when I can address to your question whether it is the positive way to promote democracy. Because wisely saying, even if my data shows a positive relationship, we can see now worldwide what exactly USAID data, democracy data specifically, has been doing to other countries. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to you, Steve, for your 2 questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for the questions. The first question was how trade openness leads to infrastructure development. When trade openness increases, then the country improves their infrastructure by improving their roads, network, and transportation system, and by developing ports so that they can export their products to the foreign countries. So and they also can improve. They also can import foreign products easily in their countries. So trade openness leads to infrastructure development. The second question was they told about the countries I have selected. They were
And the time period. Why?
country and the time period. They were Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Pakistan. For selecting the countries, we considered that these countries were there was similar conditions in this country. For example, in another South Asian country, Afghanistan, that was totally politically volatile condition. During this time period, 2002 to 2022, there was war in this country. So we can see that this is an outlier, and this can distort our result. So we have considered these 5 countries and eliminated other countries from our sample. And another
These were the two questions. I think.
yes, these were the 2 questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
That's very helpful. Do we have any other questions from the floor? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. This is Zohair Bahan Tibro. I am an undergrad student of International Relations, Bangladesh University of Professionals. Actually, I got several questions, so I'd like to start with Ms. Jinat. So what I came to understand by your presentation, so I have the one question for to what extent can US democracy, as you have discussed about the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, to what extent can they actually foster the democratization process that they at least vouch for in the mask of many other factors? For if I have to state like cope such aid or like their biasness toward their allies or any other factors. So is it really possible or to what extent they can be successful or be efficient in successfully transforming the democracy or in that region, and will the local people out there will accept this thing? And I would really appreciate if you can focus on the contemporary development of Middle East, like the Iran-US Israel conflict. And later on, I would like to have another question to Dr. Zulkarnain. I have clicked a picture of his slide where he mentioned that for policy implications, he has stated that in order to diversify trade, he suggested to reduce reliance on geopolitically sensitive partners or sectors, if I'm not wrong. So I would like to ask him that can you please name some geopolitically sensitive sectors or partners? And my special question would be towards you that do you consider Bangladesh a geopolitically sensitive partner in terms of the trade from India? And lastly, I'd like to ask another question to Mr. Shadli Rahman. He has said that in his introductory part, Bangladesh has gone through a rapid or quite a very comparative growth in economy for last few decades. But you mentioned that the overall growth was mostly on centralized government or centralized power. So I would like to know that if it was not centralized, it was through a decentralized mechanism, what would be the consequence otherwise? Will it be being positive outcome for us, a negative outcome, or even the bureaucracy of Bangladesh has that much capacity to decentralize the whole system? Thank you so much.
Sure. I'll let the presenters go first.
Yeah, sure. Let's just see if there's any other questions in the room.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to the presenters.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Masufa from Northsouth University, Department of Economics. So my question is for Asif Irfan sir. You have mentioned that government effectiveness turned out to be significant in your result, which is very surprising, and we didn't expect. Yeah, Shadli sir mentioned that. And my question is, how did you find that, and what variable or variables, in your opinion, do you think have brought you to this conclusion? Because again, this is very surprising. And how do you explain it to a general audience? Because we expect that government interventions will always help us to grow. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more question. One more question for the room. Otherwise, we'll just go to the.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we have one here. No. Okay.
No,
Okay.
okay, yeah.
Sorry.
I'll let the presenters go, and then I'll finish up.
Sorry, just for everyone.
Thank you. But I would like to ask you to repeat the question, please, because I couldn't notice. But
Sure. My question was, since you have discussed about the MENA region, and I wanted to know to what extent the US democracy or the US democracy as a term can be successful or effective enough to transform or to reinstate democracy in that region and move to the local people out there, accept this thing, focusing in or under the light of the recent development of US-Iran
You noted down my questions.
so, addressing your question, it is quite similar to what Mr. Siam has said, or it is quite similar to what Mr. Shadlion has said, that in order to understand the individual effect, what my paper didn't do in this case, but would probably like to extend more, is to understand the individual effect of each dimension of the democratization. And again, I would like to thank you for raising this, but till now my paper hasn't explored this, but this is a very great aspect that I would like to explore. Okay.
Perfect. Should we go to? We'll go to you online.
So if I'm not wrong, the question was that specific to the Bangladesh, how the geopolitical sensitivity it is for the exports. So the answer
the question was about, just to clarify, about reducing reliance on sensitive sectors, and if that also applies to reducing reliance between India and Bangladesh as a geopolitically sensitive relationship.
Yeah. So the first part, the answer of the first part question. So we have seen that there are the certain sectors which is sensitive to the geopolitical. For example, especially the oil and energy sector, especially oil and manufacturing sector, iron and steel. However, there are certain sectors, for example, this medicine, pharma industry, although those are not sensitive. Yes, sensitivity changes across the sectors. Now, coming to the second part about the Bangladesh specific, there that one thing, how geopolitical sensitivities. So that is reflected by the geopolitical index, which is constructed by the other authors. Yeah, it does capture. Then coming how it is going to affect the India and Bangladesh exports, that I have not done, because here I have taken the geopoliticals and I have seen the impact of that on the aggregate exports. Notice, so that's I have proposed in that future someone can do the bilateral geopolitical risk, then their impact on the bilateral exports. That I have not considered in this particular paper. So here I have seen the geopolitical risk aggregate of the whole of the world and how it is going to impact the aggregate exports of the India. So commenting on that, how sensitive will be to the Bangladesh, I think it will be not possible right now at this.
Okay.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll come to you, then we'll come to you.
I'll finish up. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for the question. The question was about the insignificance of the indicator government effectiveness. While we take the indicator, the government effectiveness index, during the data analysis, we found that the government effectiveness index was very poor for most of the South Asian nations, and that poor level was consistent over our study period, or that means over the 2 decades. But we can see that the infrastructure development of the gross fixed capital formation improved day by day or year by year over the 20 years of our study period. So we can say that the government effectiveness was insignificant for this reason, because the government effectiveness was very low at that point and consistent at the low level. But other indicators like GDP per capita, trade openness, and political stability, these indicators was improved during these years, and the infrastructure development was also improved during this period. So we can say that other variables are the reasons for the infrastructure development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Shirley, thank you for,
Thank you.
we're not supposed to be answering new questions, but thank you for.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So I think your question was about economic growth and centralization, right? So just to clarify, when I was saying like Bangladesh has had economic growth, but then also centralization, I didn't mean centralization of growth. I meant centralization of power, right? So, and your second question was what would have happened if power or growth was decentralized. So just to be clear, I think growth has been decentralized. That is why we have seen over the past 20 or 30 years, our ultra poor, our rate of ultra poor people has come down. What does that mean? If ultra poor people rate come down, it means people in the rural areas and people in the villages, people in the small cities, they're kind of coming up, right? So in terms of poverty reduction, or in terms of economic growth, it has been decentralized, right? So just to clarify, and what would have happened if power was decentralized instead of centralized? Well, it's hard to say, because throughout Bangladesh's history, we have never seen power or influence being decentralized. But so I can only theorize or hypothesize here. But I would definitely think that the elite capture that we see, that's one. Two, the kind of difficultly close relationship we see between bureaucracy and business or big business. I think those two things would definitely be lower if power was decentralized, right? Maybe not completely, but to a large extent. So I think if power was decentralized, those two or three things would definitely decrease. And I think that our democracy would therefore be a little bit stronger. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just see if there are any final questions from the room. Otherwise, I think we can close slightly early because we're down one presentation. Does anyone have any final questions they want to raise now? No? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the panelists. This was a very stimulating debate, and obviously the number of questions shows how much interest there is from across the audience. I'll make a final plug for the British High Commission. We're obviously very interested in what's happening in Bangladesh. We've worked in democracy and governance and state affairs for many years, and so we are a solid partner for Bangladesh, and we continue to be so. So thank you very much for joining the panel. Thank you very much to our presenters, but also thank you to you, the audience, and the people online. Thanks very much. Round of applause. Okay, presentation.
Should do the honors.
Do we want to stand somewhere?
Yes.
And take some photos for the clearing, yeah.
I'll just give you that space. I'll just move back.
Yeah. Where's his hand?
Yeah.
Do you have a round of applause? And I say it was obviously. Yeah, BFC. There we are. Thank you. Thank you.
That brings to the end of record session 11. On behalf of SANEM, I would like to sincerely thank our chair, Mr. Neil Gandhi, and our discussant, Mr. Shakir Rahman, and all our presenters for rich and thought-provoking extension governance and political economy. We will now break for tea and coffee at 5:15 p.m. The evening plenary session on trade and macroeconomic challenges in South Asia will begin at 5:45 p.m. in the auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you.